सर्वेभ्यो सर्वेभ्यो नमः. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you present here physically and to numerous other friends who have joined us online to this annual flagship event of the Gokhale Institute of Public Affairs, that is the Gokhale Day Lecture. As all of us here are well aware, D.V. Gundappa, the revered founder of our institute, considered Gopal Krishna Gokhale a very great figure. He was an inspiration, a force of inspiration to him. The motto of our institute is "Public life must be spiritualized." It is a saying of Gopal Krishna Gokhale's, and the various activities that the institute has considered it fit to engage in over the decades are all in one or the other way guided by the founding principles of Gopal Krishna Gokhale's legacy. So we consider it fitting to have a lecture, seminar, etc. to keep the memory of the great man alive, and we have been organizing activities in this regard every year. And this year, to deliver the Gokhale Day lecture, we have with us Prof.A. Prasanna Kumar, who have joined us from the far away Visakhapatnam. I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir. It is a pleasure and honor, not just in the literal sense of the word, but also it is quite moving to have such an illustrious personage amidst us. What is interesting about Professor A. Prasanna Kumar is that he effortlessly straddles many domains. He was a professor of political science. He was an avid sports person. He used to broadcast talks on various sports such as cricket, football, and tennis for many years for the AIR. And he is also very learned in music and literature. But from the little time that I am fortunate to spend with him from yesterday, what I have learned is he finds it most happy to be recognized as a teacher. So to begin with that facet of his, he was a professor of politics in the Andhra University for about 2 decades, and he is currently the founder president of the Center of Policy Studies in Visakhapatnam. He was the regional director of the Visakhapatnam chapter of National Maritime Foundation, and most importantly, he was also the rector of the Andhra University from April to October 1995. He has served on the boards and committees of various distinguished universities in various capacities. He has successfully guided about 25 research scholars for their PhD and about 15 students for their MPhil degrees. And he has published more than 20 books on political science and government of Andhra Pradesh, and also on international relations. He was invited as the Fulbright Fellow in the USA during the 1969 and 1970s, and he was also a visiting professor at Georgia Atlantic University in the United States in the summer of 1994. And coming to his facet as a sports person, he broadcasted talks for the AIR for many number of years with respect to tennis and cricket, and he has also authored books on cricket, which happen to have the forewords written by such eminent cricketers such as Gundappa Vishwanath, who is also a Kannadiga. He has edited souvenirs on cricket and tennis matches, and he was also a columnist for the distinguished daily Indian Express. He used to write a column for many years entitled Sports Parade. Like I said, he is the author of many distinguished books, including Dr. B. Pattabhi Sitaramaya, A Political Study, Celebrities All, which has a foreword by Justice M. Hidayatullah, who was the then Vice President of India. Footprints of Divinity is important for us today in the context of today's talk because it happens to be a reader of Mahatma Gandhi. Game of Memories is related to cricket, international cricket again on the eponymous game, Homage to Mahatma Gandhi, which is an anthology, and several other books. We are extremely delighted and honored, sir, to have such an accomplished professor amidst us. Once again, I welcome you. I must also take this opportunity to extend our warm welcome to Sri Murali Garu, who is amidst us. He was kind enough to accompany the learned professor because he is in his advanced age. He cannot travel alone. So I thank Mr. Murali for making this happen. And the topic for today is important from many respects. The learned professor has given the title as Mahatma Gandhi for our times. At this juncture, where our country has successfully completed more than 75 years of political independence, it becomes all the more important for all of us to reflect and cogitate upon the founding fathers, the people who made our country what it is today. So, without further ado, I request the learned professor, to please give the talk. Yes.
Pranams to respected Ramaswamy Garu, who represents all the distinguished elders who have so graciously come here to hear a layman talk about a great man, Mahatma Gandhi. I am very grateful to Shashikaran for receiving me at the airport yesterday. India is a vast country, and Bangalore, like all growing cities, is a city of long distances. So traveling up and down, even by car, whatever it is a very arduous task, which the young man has performed much to my convenience and satisfaction. I am honored by the presence of all of you. I wish I had the opportunity to thank you individually by name with respect. Now that I have thanked the senior-most gentleman here, I am grateful to every one of you for being here. I am very thankful to Mr. Ramu, who has been with me on telephone, and if telephone is not there, he used to talk to me almost every day to Vizag, and he doesn't even lose a minute to visit my room and find out what I need. Almost all the time he is with me. I'm very grateful to you, sir. Thank you. Now, the subject I have chosen is rather complex. Gandhi for our times, Mahatma Gandhi for our times. Times are always turbulent. History tells us either there are wars, or there are natural disasters, or there are man-made disasters. So you can't say this is a very peaceful period, this is a golden age. Only in history textbooks we used to learn as children the golden age under Mauryas, Guptas, etc., etc. But that is all gold. That disappeared long, long ago. So times are very difficult. Our times are particularly difficult for a variety of reasons. In my humble opinion, the most important reason being neo-Malthusian trilemma, as a sociologist very rightly described. What is this neo-Malthusian trilemma? It consists of three dimensions. One is, this is an overpopulated planet. Undoubtedly, more than 7.9 billion people inhabiting this planet Earth, it's an overloaded planet. It is an overheated planet. Once the load is heavy, the heat naturally increases. Vizag is a very humid place. People coming from Bangalore to Vizag cannot stay there even for 1 hour because it's very humid. Whereas people coming from Vizag to Bangalore find this a paradise. Therefore, it is a neo-Malthusian trilemma, he said. And most importantly, we are consuming more than what we should consume. We are producing more than what we can and we should produce. If it is the United States and Russia, nuclear weapons. I used to tell my students in the classroom long ago when I was teaching that the Cold War period during which Russia and America were literally abusing each other, the Americans one day very proudly said, if you want to destroy us, you cannot do it. But if you try to destroy us in 16 minutes as you said you would, I can destroy you in 15 minutes, he said. So that 1 minute superiority the United States claimed because of accumulation of nuclear weapons. So the world is consuming more than it should. And we are definitely passing through very turbulent times, very difficult times. That is why, for instance, when you open the newspaper, the most important thing we find, problem we face every day, especially the elders, is the problem is joblessness. Our youngsters, we are very proud that we are number one in many things. We are number one in youth population. World's largest number of youth live in India. We are number one in milk production. We are number one in other things also. And Virat Kohli may say we are number one in cricket also. That's a different thing. When you refer to cricket, I must very proudly mention the fact that Mr. Gundappa Vishwanath is my very good friend. I said proudly because of one reason. This happened, this is a thing that you would like to hear, though it's a digression. It was in 1967 that when I was doing the radio broadcast, as he mentioned, that Karnataka cricketers led by V. Subramanya, they were to come, 17 of them were to come. Unfortunately, because of some development, 17 of them could not turn up. Therefore, they wanted to include some available youngsters, other youngsters. Normally, a cricket team, 16 persons or 17 persons, 18 persons go. And many youngsters came. And one was a very tender-looking boy by name Gundappa Vishwanath. And that boy, he had chance because Subramanya did not come. But to the misfortune of Andhra, that boy took the bat, 3 wickets fell in 2 overs. The Andhra bowlers were literally on top. And this boy started hitting the ball to this place, that place, and not hitting it hard, but gently directing it with polish, dignity, and elegance. And he scored 234 runs in one day. That day, Vishwanath became my good friend. And I was doing the broadcasting part of it and the writing part of it. And I was pleasantly surprised when about a month ago, somebody from Delhi sent me the autobiography of Gundappa Vishwanath. And on page 21 or so, there was a paragraph about me by Vishwanath. Because after he scored that double century, I spoke. Being professionally a speaker and a classroom teacher, as he said, perhaps I spoke reasonably well, and perhaps he liked what I said. And then he wrote a paragraph about my speech, about my humor, and other things which I did not possess. And therefore, since then, he has been my good friend. You will not mistake me if I say I have traveled across the country from different parts of the country. I can often say without any hesitation that the Andhras are by nature a little more flamboyant than is necessary by nature. Whereas the Kannadigas by nature are a little more soft than they should be. Because whenever this is what I mean, generally I say it without any hesitation. Because somebody asked me a question, you compare the southern states, you talk about Kerala, how they speak Malayalam, etc., etc. Tamilians and Andhras were at loggerheads for a number of reasons, because of Andhras wanted a separate state, and Rajgopalachari would not give it, and therefore that's a different thing. Malayalis are gifted in their own way. And S.P. Balasubramaniam, my good friend, late S.P. Balasubramaniam, he said to me, if God gives me another Janma, I will be born in Karnataka. And then, this is what exactly he said. And then why? The people there love me so much, more than the Andhras do. The Andhras even do not clap when I sing well. Whereas in Karnataka, they literally worship me, he said. 3 months later, he passed away. This is the general impression that by this, all generalizations, said a great scholar, are false, including this. I am generalizing. But generalizations, even if they are false, they are applicable to a large extent. If you take India for that matter, people of particular state are very garrulous. All the time, they keep talking. Even if you don't want to hear, they would keep talking. And people of some other areas are different. And by nature, the Kannadigas are among the quieter lot. They speak less, they hear more. That is why perhaps I'm not going to tire you out. But that is why my confidence level has gone up a little, because of the absolute truth that the Kannadigas have greater patience than the people of the other 5 South Indian states. 5, I must say, because today the people who are talking the loudest and the foulest language are from my neighboring state, that is Telangana. because the chief minister of the state is challenging the Prime Minister of India. Therefore, this is a habit with people, and they talk in politics, in public life, or whatever it is. But when you talk about literary output and things like this, no comparison should be made. Because just now I have received 2 wonderful copies of books written by Sri Ramaswamy Garu. And then people keep writing. There are great poets in every part of the country, there is no doubt about it. And every part of the country takes pride in the fact that it has its own uniqueness. There is nothing wrong in that. Therefore, when I wanted to talk about Mahatma Gandhi today, Gandhi for our times, Why for our times and why Mahatma Gandhi for that matter? In my humble opinion, there has not been, as a student of history, anybody comparable to Mahatma Gandhi. Mr. Ramchandra Guha, who lives in Bangalore, whom I know a little, though I did not venture to visit him because nobody should be disturbed, especially a writer. He's a prolific writer. And Ramchandra Guha wrote a famous line. He said, when the occasion demands, Mahatma Gandhi can reduce himself to a state of zeroness. He becomes a zero. That means total self-effacement. He becomes a zero when the occasion demands. That's the greatness of Mahatma Gandhi, he said. Absolutely true. Because you talk about the great leaders of yesteryears, normally we mention four. Mahatma Gandhi got us freedom. Jawaharlal Nehru, who built the institutions, the architecture of democracy. Sardar Patel, who unified the 562 princely states. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who very intelligently drafted the constitution of the main articles of the constitution. Therefore, these four generally we refer to. So that is why somebody said, Nehru is the heart, Patel is the hand, Rajaji is the head. Mahatma Gandhi used to make fun by calling Nehru the heart, Rajaji the head, very intelligent man, Patel the hand. That is why he said, Nehru is a talker, Patel is a doer. Be careful with Patel, he said, Gandhiji. Therefore, Patel means business. 600 states, you can't. Are you going to be part of India? Yes. If not yes, you are going to be part of India. If not no, you are going to be part of India. Yes or no, you are going to be part of India. He made it. He unified the 562 princely states. And so when Mahatma Gandhi was on the scene, and when the British were at their worst, what is greatness about Mahatma Gandhi in one line, if you want to say? The word hate is not there in his dictionary. It's a love. He drove away the British from India without uttering one bad word, without going on agitation even on one occasion. It was a very interesting thing. That is why Martin Luther King Jr., he said, the greatness of Gandhi lies in the fact that he drove away the strongest power on earth without uttering one strong word. That is Gandhiji. He never abused the British. He simply drove them away. Satyagraha, Satyagraha. Satyagraha. What is this Satyagraha? Satyagraha. Where is Agraha? Where is Satyagraha? No, Satyagraha, if you don't know anything about Satyagraha, he used to say, Satya, Agraha are as old as the hills and the rivers, as old as our civilization. It is part of our culture. We are all born with certain qualities which we don't discover ourselves unless the situation demands. So Gandhiji began his life in a very interesting way. His years in South Africa, where he was ill-treated. And when he was thrown out of the compartment, Maritzburg compartment, by a racist for being an Indian. You can't say, you're an Indian. You sit with me in the first class compartment. Threw him out of the compartment. He fell flat at Maritzburg. And you know what Gandhiji immediately said? That was the most creative moment in my life. What is so very creative about it? That was the moment when I realized the importance of love. It is not by throwing out the other fellow that I settle the score. Why did he throw me out? What was the reason for that? That reason he found out. It is because of the South African rulers. And then began the rule, the opposition to the South African rule, the opposition. And it went on till 1915, till he came to India. And so, very interestingly, the historian writes, look at Indian history. 1857 was a horrible year for us. And then 1858, the Government of India Act came, the British took over. 1861, Tagore was born. 1863, Vivekananda was born. 1866, the great Gokhale was born. 1869, Gandhi was born. 1872 was born that famous leader, 1872, who wrote the essence of the Indian Constitution. Now, this is how India traversed from a very difficult situation to a reasonably safe position. The second half of the 19th century saw the transformation, and that is why the historian very beautifully said, when Vivekananda passed away, the historian wrote, from here to Gandhi, it was but one step. Vivekananda passed away in 1903, June 4th or whatever it is, 1903. From here to Gandhi, it was but one step. That one step was Hanuman's step, and that one big step was Gandhi's step. And that step was step from bondage to freedom, and that was the turning point in Indian history, 1920. And from 1920 onwards, he took over. And Mahatma Gandhi, when he took over the leadership of the Congress party, remember there was opposition to him from several quarters. Throughout his life, one thing very interesting, I often mention that, Mahatma Gandhi had two unfailing enemies, critics. One was Jinnah, the other was Ambedkar. Both of them attacked Gandhi from either side, and Gandhi did not bother to reply to them. And when he started his life in a very humble way, in a very modest way, the first lesson that Gandhi learnt was from his guru, Gokhale, whose Jayanti we celebrate and whose memory we honor today. What is it that Gokhale taught Mahatma Gandhi? Gokhale taught Gandhi the greatest virtue of moderation. Don't get upset. Moderate, reflect, think. Esteemed elders, there is always a question. The ancient Greeks, for instance, they raised a question in ancient times. Raising a question and answering it was the great practice of Greek civilization. The Westerners always begin by worshipping the Greek civilization. We Indians, we started from the Vedic age. In the Vedas it was said like this, it must have been said like this, so and so said, that Rishi said this Rishi said that, etc., etc. Therefore, when they started this, Mahatma Gandhi, when he literally came under the influence of Gokhale, moderation, I wanted to refer to the great Plato. What is the difference? You must have heard about Plato, Aristotle, etc., etc. Plato was this disciple of Socrates. Socrates was the great teacher, the great oracle, the great master of wisdom. And people went to him and said, "Oh, master, teach us wisdom." What is wisdom? Socrates said, "I don't know anything." "No, sir, you can't say that. If you say that you don't know anything, we don't believe you." Then Socrates said, "The only thing I know is I know nothing." Then they understood this is a paradox. What is this paradox? Paradox is a contradiction. This paradox is the mother of philosophy. Paradox is the mother of science. Paradox is the mother of knowledge. It is from paradox that all these things came into prominence. You take modern times, Einstein or somebody else for that matter. I refer to Einstein because Einstein himself very wonderfully said, Mahatma Gandhi to me was a moral compass. He was a moral compass. What a beautiful metaphor, moral compass. He was a compass. I used to, whenever I have a doubt, I used to refer to Mahatma Gandhi. So how would he solve this? How would he look at the problem? And therefore, Mahatma Gandhi's biggest challenge was communal harmony. It began in the 1870s, this communal discord between the two religions, Hinduism and Islam. And if it began in 1870s, Gandhiji started finding solution to it, bringing them together, finding ways and means, and disagreeing with people, agreeing with people. And then his weapon was satyagraha, etc., etc. And the beauty of Mahatma Gandhi's personal life is, Gandhiji, see, very often, you will agree with me, we have difficulties at home. But when we go to office, we don't carry the difficulties to the office. Because if we carry the difficulties to the office, what happens is office work suffers and domestic peace is not the gainer. Both ways we are the loser. Therefore, in personal life also you'll agree with me that the most important thing for Mahatma Gandhi, the advantage he had was his wife, Ba. That is why Sardar Patel wonderfully said, it is not Bapu's picture that we must see every day. We must see Ba's picture every day. Ba is 3 months older than Bapu. It is not Bapu's picture we must see every day. It is Ba's picture. Because she used to. There is a story, apocryphal it was not. You might have heard about it. Gandhi one day, he was angry. He lost his temper now and then. He was very angry with his wife. He said, "Get out of my house. If you don't." All that he wanted was, there was one Telugu man by name Chakraya. This Chakraya was a Dalit. Chakraya used the toilet. Bapu said to Ba, "Clean the toilet." Ba said, "I won't clean it." Bapu very angrily said, "If you don't do it, get out of my house." Look at the man. If you don't do it, you get out of my house. She coolly, this habit of what you call North Indian ladies putting the scarf on the sari on the head, and she put the sari, the cover on the head, and then she went to the gate. They had a cottage, Sevagram cottage. She went to the cottage, and then Bapu was wondering what she was going to do. She coolly walked up to the cottage, and then gently closed the door, came back inside, and said, "Did you marry to drive me out of your house? Why did you marry me then?" She said. Bapu said, "I felt ashamed of myself, and for a day I could not find inner peace. The inner peace was missing because I was defeated. She won the..." Now this kind of personal relationship, Look at another personal problem. Such problems we all have. His eldest son, Harilal, was a drunkard, and Gandhiji's humor, lively humor. Mahatma Gandhi's greatness lay in the fact that he had a wonderful sense of humor. Humor, normally, in our case, humor is we laugh at others. Gandhiji used to laugh at himself. And he laughed. His son was drinking, Harilal. And Gandhiji humorously said, look at Harilal. He is sanctifying his anatomy with the holy Ganga of liquor, he said. He is sanctifying his anatomy with the holy Ganga of liquor. Liquor. He is bathing in liquor. Look at the greatness of my son. And then what did he say? The answer to this problem is not anger, not punishment, but love. I go and love him. There was an occasion when Harilal revolted against his father and said, you decide everything for us. You choose whom we should marry. You choose whom we should meet. You choose what we should do in life. Everything you choose for our welfare or whatever it is. What are we expected to do? Then Gandhiji felt amused. The son angrily, he said, if this is the way my house, I have to function in my house, I will get out of my house. He took the box. He went to the door. He wanted to leave the house. If my father treats me so badly as an outsider, I don't want to live here. He wanted to go. So this man went to the door with the box in hand. Gandhiji quietly followed him, went to the door, smiled at him, patted him on the cheek, and gently said, forgive your father if he has hurt you. Which father would do it? Forgive your father if he has hurt you. Except crying, Harilal did everything. He was humbled. He was defeated. Father coming and saying, forgive your father if he has hurt you. This is one instance. I referred to Mahatma Gandhi's personal life at the domestic level. Look at the public life part of it. The greatest thing that Gandhiji disliked was alcohol. He said, the biggest movement I am waiting for is prohibition. Prohibition of liquor. Liquor is a destroyer. I don't know whether I would be pardoned, forgiven if I say that I entirely agree with Mahatma Gandhi. Because thousands of families, not the middle class families, not all of people like us sitting here, but go to the poor slums, and then the plight of the poor woman must be seen to be believed. Her husband is drunk, dead drunk. As a social science teacher, one day, a rickshawala was there. I was going in a cycle rickshaw. He was drinking and he was drunk and he was driving. And then I asked him, is it fair? How much money you earn? He said 25 rupees. How much do you give your wife? I give her 10, 12 rupees, sir. How many children you have? I have 3 kids. You give half of your earning? Yes, sir, I am doing the driving part of it. My children are eating at home. My wife is eating at home. This is dharma. His dharma is. So, all the cycling I do for my family, my struggle, and the liquor I drink, that is because it gives me some kind of satisfaction. His argument. So those people who argue in favor of liquor, that is why Motilal Nehru was very fond of quoting a famous Arab poet. It is not alcohol that brings disrepute to man. It is man who brings disrepute to alcohol. Motilal Nehru was very fond of quoting it. Because it is not alcohol that brings this. Many people hold a glass. Holding a glass is an art. Hold a glass well, very firmly. They drink, they enjoy a drink, a couple of pegs, one more peg, it's okay. That's the end of it. Like the Englishman who goes on drinking from 5 in the evening after he comes back from the office till about 8:30 dinner time. So it is not alcohol that brings disrepute to man. It is man who brings disrepute to alcohol. So man must be blamed for that. So this kind of philosophy, Mahatma Gandhi coming to the larger issues, the country, India, etc. as a nation. How did he keep these people together? That is the biggest question. On the one hand, different political parties. On the other hand, so many factions. On the other hand, infighting among the congressmen. I must tell you that I wrote a book on Sitaramaya, who was very close to Mahatma Gandhi. And he wrote a book on Gandhi and Gandhism. And he always used to talk about Mahatma Gandhi in public meetings. Gandhiji was a very humorous man. He said, I am a Baniya Sutrakara and Pattabhi is my Brahmin commentator. It should be the reverse, isn't it? It's a Brahmin who does the Sutrakara role. I am a Baniya Sutrakara. My Brahmin commentator is Pattabhi. And whenever Gandhiji was in lighter mood, he used to say, Pattabhi, open fire. Open fire means, go defend me. People are abusing me, defend me. And Pattabhi used to get up platform like I did, stand before the audience and then say, talk in support of Mahatma Gandhi, etc., etc. Sitaramaya and I come from the same place, Machilipatnam. And Gandhiji came to Machilipatnam. His visits to Machilipatnam is wonderful historical facts I collected. I felt very proud of them because I wrote a book on Sitaramaya. And then he used to come, Mahatma Gandhi used to say, very punctual, you can correct your watch, your clock, by the time that Gandhi used to maintain. Mahatma Gandhi was coming from from Bezwada to Machilipatnam. He said, Pattabhi, get up early in the morning, line up the people along the roadside, don't have any kind of hullabaloo, make it a quiet function, let people not talk, no speeches, I will just wave to the people and go away straight. And Pattabhi maintained it. But then Gandhi came to a place called Andhra Jatiya Kalashala. Jatiya means national Kalashala, college, Andhra Kalashala. There, Gandhiji was astonished. He was astonished for 3 reasons. Number 1, women were working very hard. Number 2, they were wearing khadi. There is an Andhra khadi, you might have heard, Pundur khadi, that is Andhra khadi, Khadar. The Andhra khadi is a very famous brand, Pundur khadi. Gandhiji wanted people to wear khadi, stand in line, and he went there, found the women working, and then people doing that. He used to like the charka. And people cracked jokes. Oh, charka is technology. Gandhiji said, I am not opposed to technology. People say I am opposed to technology. I am not opposed to technological revolution. Let science and technology progress. Let India progress scientifically and technologically. I will be very proud. Technology is everything. The toothpick is technology. The charka is technology. And people said, if the charka is of no use, Gandhiji once humorously said, you are blaming the charka. Don't blame the charka. If it is not useful, I will put it in fire, use it as firewood. Don't blame the charka because you can't use it. The charka, he used it almost regularly because he wanted to provide employment to people. And then the second principle was he wanted people to wear cloth spun on the charka, khadi. You must wear khadi, you must wear clothes prepared by you, not bought in the market. Today, for instance, if Mahatma Gandhi were alive, he would have been astonished at the number of saris and clothes that are sold in the market in millions and millions, and the way India is exporting. India is the biggest exporter of textiles in the world. It is one of the biggest exporters of textile. So at the higher level, at the larger plane, Mahatma Gandhi was greatly worried about the unity of the country. But then he always knew that this Hindu-Muslim hatred would go to such an extent, and he once openly said, no Muslim would kill me. If at all I am killed, I will be killed by a Hindu, he said. So he used to be very prophetic about his utterances. He used to see the future. He used to think about the future. And about the younger generation, especially, he came to Masilepetam, I was mentioning about that. He had admired the way the college was maintained. Because social reconstruction and women emancipation were the two fundamental principles, goals of Mahatma Gandhi. Social emancipation. There should be no exploitation of the distressed classes of the Dalits. If a Dalit is exploited, if untouchability is practiced, I will not visit Masilepetam, he said. Those days untouchability was practiced. I would not visit Masilepetam. Masilepetam is not my place. Untouchability should be eradicated. Dalit emancipation must take place at the earliest. The emancipation of the distressed classes. And that is why his goal was to reduce the cleavage, the hiatus between the rich and the poor. At any cost it must be reduced. For that he said, practice what we said, Gokhale's famous principle, moderation, moderation, moderation. That is why his famous quote, we must always distinguish between need and greed. This is the age of greed or need, we don't know. Because if one television set is there in the house, people are not happy. If one cell phone is there, people are not happy. We must have at least 2 or 3 of each variety, whether it is a television set or a cell phone or whatever it is. So Gandhiji's greatest thing in the sense that he used to laugh at himself. Most religious men are politicians in disguise. Most religious men are politicians in disguise. I am a politician wearing a religious mask. I am a politician. Look at the way he was laughing at himself. Most religious men disguise themselves as politicians, as leaders. I am a politician wearing a mask, and that mask is the religious mask. That is to draw the people's attention, to motivate them, etc., etc. Religion per se is not bad. No faith is bad. All faiths are alike. In one sentence he says, all religions have faults. All religions have foils. All religions have drawbacks. But the drawbacks and other things should not be cared for. We must try to overcome them. We must try to overcome them. That is why one of the important things he was talking about was Gandhiji was a veritable miracle worker, the savior and builder of modern India. And he came to, I must tell you a joke, he came to Visakhapatnam, the place where I come from. Of course, I was not there, I was not born. He came to Visakhapatnam. It was September 14th, 1921. Behind him was coming Amanullah Khan, his Muslim friend, dear friend. The police wanted to arrest him, not because he was a Muslim, but because he was a congressman. So the police immediately, on seeing him, they arrested Amanullah Khan. Gandhiji was walking behind. Amanullah Khan was walking ahead of Mahatma Gandhi. And he shouted at Mahatma Gandhi, Bapu, Bapu, the police are arresting me. What is it that I should do? Police are arresting, save me, save me. And Gandhiji smilingly said, how fortunate you are. Visakhapatnam is a beautiful place. To be arrested in Vizag, you are arrested in a sanatorium. You will live in a very good place. Don't worry about that, he said. So that way, he had the ability to laugh at himself, to laugh at difficult situations, and come out of crisis. That is why Gandhiji once said, if I had no sense of humor, I would have committed suicide long, long ago. If I had no sense of humor, I would have committed suicide long, long ago. That is why Mahatma Gandhi, that does not mean, Radhakrishnan explained it very well. Radhakrishnan said Mahatma Gandhi was never depressed. The word depression was not there in his dictionary. He was never frustrated. But only thing that Mahatma Gandhi admitted, which Radhakrishnan emphasized, was Gandhiji felt helpless. What is the difference between helplessness and frustration? Frustration is that you are not able to bring people together, Hindus and Muslims together. Helplessness is, Mahatma Gandhi felt so helpless, so unhappy. What is the point in my living? You know, he used to say, I will live for 125 years. One of his last statements, it was a very interesting statement. I recorded Mahatma Gandhi's last day, last birthday. That was October 2nd, 1947. What did he do? What did he said, I wanted to live for 125 years because I wanted to see India as one nation, Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Christians, all people being together. But now that is not possible, I don't want to live 125 years. I have changed my mind. So, his last birthday, you know what he did? First morning he got up, the first thing he would do, go to the charka, start spinning. The second thing he did was, Nehru and Patel came to greet him. Nehru first, Prime Minister, then Patel. Others followed. He said, all of you sit down. Do Ramdhun. Ramdhun was his popular. Ramdhun, Ram Bhajan. He said, pray to Ram to take me away as early as possible. I don't want to live any longer. I don't want to see India being faction-driven, India being tortured by these forces of separatism. I don't want to see that. I want India to be united. Therefore, in India, there is no question of distinction between the rich and the poor, between the Dalit and the advanced man, caste community man, between the Muslim and the Hindu, between the Parsi and the Christian, no distinction at all. I want India. But that India is not likely to take place. That is why I want to pass away as early as possible. All of you please pray. That is what he said. Now, Mahatma Gandhi, in one of his famous sentences, he said, somebody jokingly said, to live with a saint in heaven is bliss and glory. Isn't it? All of us talk of moksha. Tyagaraja, for instance, is moksha. Ultimately, he wanted to merge in Rama. You know about that. Purandaradasa, Tyagaraja, etc., etc. To live in heaven is bliss and glory. To live with a saint on earth is a different story. Because saints and religious people, Gandhiji humorously said, are very difficult to manage. I one day asked a friend of mine, all of us pray to Lord Venkateswara, a lot of Tirupati, for instance, Andhra Desha. Here you worship Chamundeshwari Devi, and you worship Mother, Divine Mother, please come and visit my house, please spend a night in my house, etc., etc. Somebody asked a question. If really the Divine Mother or Lord Venkateswara comes to your house and stays for a day, can you manage? Can you really manage? Can you give him or her food that they want? Can you make them happy? What will you do? This is a question that Mahatma Gandhi, that is why he said, religion should not be ritualistic. This is where Gandhi and Vivekananda agree on one point. Vivekananda was very hard-hitting on Hindu religion. He said, we have wasted our time. Swami Vivekananda very beautifully said, he came from America, 1897, famous speech and all that. He came from America. And then people went and asked him, Swamiji, you have come from America. What is the difference between the Americans and the Indians? Swami Vivekananda said, the Americans are collectively good, the Indians are individually good. The Americans are collectively good, the Indians are individually good. The second question that he was asked was, Sir, Indians are religious minded. They read the Bhagavad Gita every day. They pray to God every day. But how is it that India is so backward? In 1825, our GDP was 25% or so. In 1900, our GDP was zero. Swami Vivekananda came back from America in 1894. And then they said, how is it that India is collapsing? Swamiji very beautifully said, the Gita preaches neutrality towards the fruits of work. Indians are neutral towards work itself. That is the difference. The Gita says, be neutral towards the fruits of work. Don't expect the fruits of work to be available to you immediately. You must be prepared to receive whatever you deserve and whatever you get. The Indians are neutral towards work itself. I think on this point, there is perhaps general agreement among the distinguished members of the audience. Because work is something that we try to shun. That is why work, what here again, we turn a little philosophical and then ask a question. What is work? What do you mean by work? What do you mean by productivity? We were talking about writing books and things like this. And work is something that we expect women to do. 65% of work in the world, according to United Nations, is done by women. 35% of work is done by men. 10% of income is enjoyed by women. 90% of income is enjoyed by men. Look at this. This is a figure given not by me, but by the United Nations. That means 90% of the reward goes to men for doing less work. And 90% of the work is done by women, and they get only 30% or less than 30% of the reward. That is why one of the important things that Mahatma Gandhi taught us, perhaps he wanted Indians to do was, first of all, he wanted all politicians. There is a joke. Gandhiji used to observe every Monday the day of silence. Kingsley Amis, the British writer, he came to India. He said Gandhiji was a very intelligent man. Why did he make every Monday a day of silence because he wanted Indian politicians to shut their mouth on Monday. At least one day a week, they should shut their mouth. That is why Gandhiji wanted every Monday should be a day of silence. So, the way Mahatma Gandhi molded India, what is the legacy of Mahatma Gandhi? I shall close with that in just 5 minutes. The legacy of Mahatma Gandhi, in my humble opinion, I am not being preachy when I say this. Is my time up? The legacy of Mahatma Gandhi, in my humble opinion, what is a legacy? Legacy is what you leave behind, what you bequeath, what you confer on your children. What is the legacy? Some people say it's a parental legacy. The parents have not taken proper care of the children. That is why children are spoiled. That's not correct. So that is why Abdul Kalam, I liked him immensely, and I had the good fortune of sharing the days once or twice with him. Abdul Kalam, the great former president of India, he said, India will become a great nation provided one thing happens. The father, the mother, the boy or the girl, and the teacher, all the four must come together and work. That is the solution to India's problem. India will become a prosperous nation. India's productivity will grow. India's popularity will improve. India as a nation will prosper, provided the home and the school and the classroom, they come together. We don't do it. What, of course, one question is, my friend may say, a classroom is not what it used to be. That's a different thing. Because teachers are not what they were. I'm not talking about myself, but generally, teachers are not what they were. And therefore, we were fortunate in our teachers and students. We had good students and we had good teachers. We were fortunate. But today, the change must come about, in my humble opinion. If Mahatma Gandhi were alive, he would have insisted that care must be taken, first of all, at the school level, at the village level. And Gandhiji often emphasized the fact that our villages are neglected. India is a land of villages, and in villages, all neglect is very visible, is so pronounced, and we must immediately take care of it. So how do you develop the villages? That is the question, that is the challenge. Jawaharlal Nehru, when India became free, made a very important point, but he did not realize it in his lifetime. Nehru's point was, let us all come together to make India a great nation. Well said. And he said, first thing we must do is, we must remember that India is a land of villages. And we must build our institutions at the village level, at the gram level. That we have not been doing. All that we could do was democratic decentralization, we called it. We are calling it cooperative federalism today. It is neither cooperative federalism nor democratic decentralization. It is a kind of divisiveness that is spreading across the country, which we have to bear in mind. So in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, ultimately, Mahatma Gandhi's legacy is that if only we practice one value that Gandhiji gave, I mentioned it in the beginning itself, the word hatred never existed in his dictionary. The word love, always. That is why he said when his son was drinking left, right and center, he said, I don't want to conquer my son by punishing him. I want to conquer my son by loving him. So the more you love, the more you believe in yourself. That is the way, that is the route, the Gandhian route. That exactly what Gandhiji has left behind. In the name of Mahatma Gandhi, we do many things, many funny things, many odd things, many memorials are raised, but all these are not enough. Unless we practice one Gandhian value, one Gandhian value. His values are truth, and ahimsa too. His values are love. His values are absence of hatred. His values are the most important value he always practiced. That is why somebody said, Gandhiji never preached what he did not practice. One of his most important suggestions was forgiveness. Forgiveness. That is why Hindustan Standard, there was a paper in Delhi. When Gandhiji died on January 30th, we were all kids. We came back home. Nobody was cooking. Everybody was silent. Our elders were silent. There was total mourning in the house. And people said, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" Children, we came from the playground back home. We asked the question, what is the background? What's the reason for this? Don't talk, don't talk. Mahatma Gandhi is gone. So that was the saddest day in our lives. That was also the day on which Nehru made a stirring speech, a speech which everybody must read and remember. He said, Gandhi belongs to the future. The future Indian is a Gandhian. Radhakrishnan himself said, Gandhi is a conscience keeper of every Indian. Because if every Indian has conscience, he remembers Mahatma Gandhi. Because he knows that he is a legatee of Mahatma Gandhi. In his heart of hearts, he knows that the inspiration came from Mahatma Gandhi, came to him from Mahatma Gandhi. That is why both Radhakrishnan and Jawaharlal Nehru agreed. They made two very famous speeches. Nehru cried. We were all listening to the radio. We were young at the time. Pandit Nehru cried over the radio and he sobbed over the radio. He said, the light has gone out of our lives and there is darkness everywhere. Very famous line of Jawaharlal Nehru. But he said, the light that has gone out of our lives is a light that will live forever. Is a light that will inspire people of the future. Is a light that will show the way, the world, the way out of darkness. That is the light that Mahatma Gandhi represented. Ultimately, esteemed friends, my humble submission is Mahatma Gandhi lives forever. As Martin Luther King very beautifully said, if one person lives in public memory, that is why it was said of Abraham Lincoln, the longer he is dead, the more he is remembered. The longer he is dead, the more he is remembered. In my humble submission, the longer Gandhi is dead, the more he is remembered and needed. It is not remembered, he is needed. Gandhi is needed because you can solve domestic problems, problem between husband and wife, father and son, between teacher and student, between members of organization. All these problems can be solved through the Gandhian way. There is no way except to accept that India's greatest treasure, as Jawaharlal Nehru said, our greatest treasure was Mahatma Gandhi. And that wealth, he said, will guide us not for a few centuries, but for hundreds of years, India will be guided. And somebody said, even our Vedas said, such culture will be the guiding light of India for the future. Therefore, there is a convergence of the traditional thought and the modern thought when you talk of Gandhi. Gandhi is traditional, Gandhi is modern. And this blend of tradition and modernity is what makes Mahatma Gandhi relevant, not for a particular time, Gandhi for our times. Our times may be troubled times, our times may be difficult times, but our times can be conquered, our times can be improved by sticking to some of the values that Mahatma Gandhi bequeathed. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I shall just uh, read out one beautiful line that Gandhiji wrote himself. Satisfaction lies in making the effort rather than in achieving the goal. You have made an effort. The goal may not have been achieved. That's a different thing. But satisfaction lies in, I have made an effort. Satisfaction lies in making the effort rather than in reaching the goal. Everybody has a goal in life. The goal may not be reached, may not be reachable, but that's a different thing. But satisfaction lies in striving to achieve the goal. That is why Gandhiji, according to extraordinary paradox, a beacon, he was a man of paradoxes. He was a man of contradictions. Gandhiji himself said, I am full of contradictions. I am not a perfect human being. He never claimed that he was perfect. Then why are we talking about Mahatma Gandhi? We were only talking about it because satisfaction lies in striving for it. In striving for perfection and not in claiming to be perfect. And then he said, Rajaji said, there was a parallel between Sri Krishna and Gandhi. Sri Krishna's life was sucked away by a hunter's arrow, and Gandhi's life was sucked away by a bullet. Rajmohan Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, who wrote a very big book on Mahatma Gandhi, he said, Mahatma Gandhi was like Rama. Where he should have been crowned, he was exiled. He should have been crowned. He should have headed the government of India. Of course, Gandhi would not accept the prime ministership or the presidentship of India. He should have guided us, but he was exiled. That means it is India's misfortune that Mahatma Gandhi disappeared from our midst at a time when we needed him most. And we also must believe that we needed Gandhi then, we need Gandhi now. And we will need Gandhi tomorrow also, because Gandhi is eternally relevant in my humble opinion. Thank you for your time. Some youngsters may say, who used the word Mahatma first? You know that, my friend? You know? Who used the word Mahatma? Gandhi. It's not Tagore. It is one of his friends, one of his classmates by name Pranjeevan Mehta, who in 1910 called him Mahatma. So the first person to use, that is why I just raised this question, because very often our children ask a question, is it Tagore who called him Mahatma Gandhi? Tagore and Gandhiji, I told our friend in the morning, there is a recent book by Rudranshu Mukherjee in which Tagore and Gandhi, the way they disagreed, they were disagreed. They did not agree with each other on many things. But then Tagore was so poetic, so brilliant, so generous. You know what he said? Bapu, when you came to my house and left, there were God's footprints on my floor, he said. When you came to my house and left, would anybody say that? When you came to my house and left, we disagreed. There were God's footprints on my floor. So even with God, we may not agree. That is what Rabindranath Tagore ultimately said. So this is that is why I named this book Footprints of Divinity. It is a book published by our center, Footprints of Divinity, in the sense that Gandhi's footprints were divine footprints according to Rabindranath Tagore. Thank you. If you are proposing a vote, only vote is one. That's Thank you.
ಆರಂಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಶ್ರೋತೃಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ವಿನಂತಿ, ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಸಿಹಿಯನ್ನು ಸ್ವೀಕರಿಸಿ ತೆರಳಬೇಕಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ವಿನಂತಿ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪೈರಿಂಗ್ ಸೆಷನ್. The professor's prodigious learning, his warm wisdom and his inspiring and absorbing eloquence was each remarkable in its own right. And the way he segued or transitioned from one topic to another, we were left really speechless in getting it together all, or getting it all together in our minds, that he was actually speaking about one person while referring to a whole host of people who have made our country and our history what it is. He began by referring to the turbulent times that we live in, and like all remarkable men, he brought it all together at the end and enlisted a few points, such as points that are imperishable values, I must say: truth, non-violence, lack of hatred, and the attitude to not let divisive forces take over, which are relevant to all times, which Gandhiji was emblematic of. Thank you, Professor, for that most absorbing session. We were greatly inspired by your talk, and we are most grateful for your acceptance of our invitation. I must record at this juncture that Nadoja Dr. S.R. Ramaswamy has been trying to get the learned professor to address us from more than 2-3 years now, but because of obvious reasons of the pandemic, we were not able to have him over, and now we are most fortunate to have him amidst us. Thank you, sir, once again. I now request Nadoja Dr. S.R. Ramaswamy to kindly give the learned professor a small token of our gratitude.